Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the tragic loss of Air India 171. I'm Geoffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt, Germany. Good morning to you, Richard.
And good afternoon to you, Geoffrey.
And today's a very special day, viewers, because today is Richard's birthday. So very happy
Ah,
birthday, Richard. Very happy birthday.
very kind of you to remember.
Yeah. Well, you did remind me twice, so yeah, I couldn't help but remember.
Well, okay. I'm waiting for the champagne to arrive.
Yeah, yes. So, viewers, today we're going to be looking at water in the EE Bay, as we suggested. But before we do, let's have a little recap. Based on the EAFR, FDR, and CCTV data provided in the preliminary report and the Boeing documentation, we have shown that the rat appears to have almost certainly deployed 3 to 4 seconds before the fuel switches were moved to cutoff based on the limited preliminary report timings and the visual references. The rat was deployed just as Air India Flight 171 was taking off on the 12th of June 2025. We have written to the AAIB India requesting clarification of the rat deployment timings. The key question is why the rat was deployed. The rat can be deployed automatically or manually. The rat is deployed automatically if both engines have failed, all 3 hydraulic pressures low, loss of electrical power to the CPTs and the FO's flight instruments, loss of all 4 EMPs and faults in the flight control system on approach, loss of all 4 EMPs and engine fails on takeoff or landing. The rat might be deployed manually if electrical instability or failure not yet triggering auto deploy, suspected EE bay damage or water ingress, precaution during critical flight phase, checklist directed, loss of situational awareness, panic, automatic logic failure. Richard, the FAA has issued an airworthiness directive on possible water leakage into the electronics equipment bay on the 787.
Yeah, it has. The most recent airworthiness directive is AD 2025-09-12, and that was for the Boeing 787-8, 9, and -10 aircraft. And it specifically addresses water leakage into the electronics equipment EE bay from above the cabin floor. The new AED was issued on the 14th of May 2025 and became effective on the 18th of June, and is a follow-on to an earlier set of directives. And it is separate from, and it does not supersede or cancel the previous directive starting in 2016. The directive targets water ingress caused by improperly installed or missing potable water couplings, which led to water migrating into EE bays, risking electrical shorts and potential loss of critical flight functions.
So the AD 2025-0912 expands the scope and applicability of the previous AD 2016-1404, does it not?
That's correct. And the previous one in 2016 focused on water leakage into the aft electronic equipment bay on just the 787-8 aircraft, and cites the root cause as faulty or improperly installed system couplings on the water system, and they lead to leaks. The solution was inspections and rework, and that on a regular basis. The new one in 2025 retains the same core actions but broadens the causal analysis. It now includes degraded or missing sealant, moisture barrier tape, tape dams, and all of these can contribute to water ingress, even if the water couplings are intact. And it adds new inspection requirements and target dates. And you have to go right through the aircraft from the forward EE bay to the aft, checking everything out.
So this is now an issue for both the forward and the aft EE bays.
Yeah, and that's the important point. And it expands the risk of water ingress because it's not just an issue of degraded couplings. It could be the degraded sealant or missing or damaged moisture barrier tape or improperly installed tape dams. And it applies to the seat tracks and the floor penetration from above the EE bays from the cabin.
So the forward EE bay contains critical systems like the flight deck avionics interfaces, airplane information system, and the flight control computers, does it not?
Exactly, and that's where it really becomes an important issue because there is now a very large systemic risk. There are more possible failure modes. There are more aircraft models involved, all of the 787-8-9-10, and both EE bays, not just the aft one. So there's a lot at stake here.
So my understanding, though, Richard, is Boeing issued a safety bulletin back in 2024 on this issue.
Yeah, and the guidance for accomplishing all of the actions required by the Airworthiness Directive can be found in the Boeing Alert and Service Bulletin back on the 6th of March 2024. And they also issued an alert requirements bulletin on the same date. So this has been well known since March 2024, more than a year. And one hopes that all the operators, including Air India, took all of these service bulletins and alert requirement bulletins very seriously.
So what happens if water leaks in to the EE bay?
Well, the AD is very clear. A water leak from an improperly installed potable water system coupling or main cabin water source, if not addressed, could cause the equipment in the EE bay to become wet, resulting in electrical short and potential loss of system functions essential for safe flight.
So has this ever happened in flight?
Yes, it has, and several operators have made reports, and that's the reason why the Airworthiness Directive was introduced. There have been several electrical anomalies traced to water intrusion in EE bays. Instances where moisture accumulation from leaking potable water lines or degraded seals led to arcing or electrical shorting, avionic fault messages, fault isolation units tripping out, and nuisance warning or degraded system warning, flight control reversion or displays blanking out. And some operators discovered the problem in flight and others only on post-flight inspection. And there have been several reports of transient faults mid-flight. So, for example, both American Airlines and United Airlines have reported the issue. American Airlines reported intermittent avionic faults on a 787-9 during descent, and post-flight inspection revealed water on multiple line replaceable units in the forward EE bay. And one operator in the Middle East, most likely Qatar or Etihad or Saudi, had two 787-8s develop electrical anomalies and ECAM messages during the cruise, and later traced that to potable water system leaks above the EE bays.
What is significant about the timing of the RAT deployment?
Well, the focus at the moment on what caused the RAT to deploy before the fuel switches were moved to cutoff leads us to consider that this was at the moment of rotation of the aircraft. Now, if you have a water accumulation somewhere, when the aircraft rotates, then that water will start to flow somewhere probably downwards into an EE bay. And we know that the RAT deployment was right after liftoff, plus or minus a second. And one reason why you might want to move fuel switches to cutoff is in the event of an engine fire. We know both engines were relit successfully, so there was obviously no engine fire damage. But there might have been a false engine alarm, a fire alarm. Another issue is the lithium ion battery may have started to smoke or to cause fire. We think that's unlikely, but if there was an avionic fire alarm or even a false avionic fire alarm, then the pilots might have reacted thinking it was an engine fire and incorrectly shut down the fuel. So we need to understand whether the RAT was deployed automatically or manually. The pilots knew that the APU would take 60 to 90 seconds to come online. And one of the possibilities is the RAT was deployed manually as a safety measure in the absence of APU power and possibly also in the absence of battery power. And water ingress into the EE bay from the potable water system might well explain our observations. As I say, any accumulation of water will start to flow as the aircraft rotates.
So, if water started to flow into the EE bay during rotation, what would happen as a result?
Well, it appears the takeoff roll up to V1 was as expected for an aircraft of that weight and configuration and the environmental conditions. Where it all goes wrong is just after rotation at the moment of liftoff. And if pooled water moved into the EE bay during rotation, that could cause electrical short circuits and would set the alarm bells ringing. So flight critical computers, the FCCs, the IRUs, the AIMs, the EECs may fail or reset. And the power distribution units are all in the EE bay, and they could trip out or arc. And you have to bear in mind when both engines are running, Boeing 787-8 is a 2.9 megawatt power generator. And if backup systems engaged and primary buses failed, short circuits in the 28 volt DC or the 115 volt AC systems, it could rapidly escalate into quite a mess. If water bridges a high current terminal, a power relay, or a contactor, arcing may be sustained long enough to cause thermal damage and ignite any flammables, insulation, hydraulic mist, whatever is flammable in the vicinity. And if the short or the arc persists, localized heating may ignite surrounding materials. The forward EE bay contains flammable insulation blankets, plastic connector housings, and hydraulic lines are routed nearby. And if a spark meets hydraulic mist or residual jet fuel vapor, then ignition is certainly possible.
So what in that event, what EICAS messages, master caution or warning and oral alarms would the flight crew received?
Well, we're showing a screenshot of the theoretically possible ICAS messages, and there are 23 of them.
Mm,
I'm not saying that all of these occurred. I'm saying these are the ones who possibly could occur. So you get electrical bus failures, engine failures, cabin altitude failures, smoke from the avionics, and so on and so on. Is a long list of messages which
mm.
would all appear in a short space of time, and you could well say is a tsunami of messages.
Totally overwhelming. Yeah. Although, of course, there's no mention of that in the preliminary report. Of course, we must stress. But yeah, is there a risk of a fire though?
Yes, the presence of the polyimide wiring or poorly sealed cable glands can exacerbate flame spreading. And despite its strengths, the insulation has known aging and degradation issues. Moisture sensitivity, it absorbs moisture, which will reduce the dielectric strength. Mechanical damage, cracking, flaking, aging, flexing, poor insulation and arc tracking. So if you get an electrical arc, it will carbonize and that will conduct electricity even through the insulation when it's breached and exposed to moisture or contamination, which is a major fire hazard. So fire or overheating can result, and that will result in smoke entering the cockpit through the cabin pressure systems and the electrical conduits or the air recirculation paths. And this could all happen very quickly. So within, say, 10 seconds, you could have a fire or a serious short taking place.
So, what examples are there of electrical issues causing aircraft fires?
Well, I think the most famous one is the Swiss Air 111,
Mm,
um, and that was an MD-11 aircraft where arcing of wire behind the cockpit ceiling ignited insulation and it caused a catastrophic fire. Another one was UPS-6, which was a Boeing 747 freighter. Electrical fire was worsened by lithium batteries and inadequate detection. And there was an ANA 787 battery fire where water or electrolyte leaked into the electrical bay and caused a fire. The first two of those crashes were fatal, and ANA 787 was not a fatal crash, but nevertheless a significant incident.
mm. That Swiss Air one was tragic. It related to the in-flight entertainment system,
Yeah,
and McDonnell Douglas refused to install it because they didn't think it was safe. So the aeroplane was delivered to Swissair, who then installed it themselves, and that concern proved to be tragically correct.
yeah.
Would a fire spread that quickly?
Yeah, it depends, of course, where the water hits. So if the water hits the contacts on one of the several secondary power distribution boxes, the SPDBs, then you would expect the bus to fault immediately and maybe arc and cause a fire. If it hits the computer systems, you might expect flight control modes to be degraded. And of course, the 787 has multiple layers of redundancy,
Mm.
but a cascading set of faults in the forward EE bay can bypass some of these safeguards. And if multiple systems are hit simultaneously, then it can start to cascade into a serious set of failures. And you might be getting lots of EICAS messages in the cockpit, but you may also get them appearing briefly and then disappearing because the system recovers.
Mm.
Um, so you just don't know what actually might have been going on in the cockpit at the time.
Yeah. So you would expect an unfolding cadence of failures rather than a sudden explosion.
Exactly. And it depends how that cadence of failures unfolds. Then the captain, as the pilot monitoring, would have been watching the EICAS messages. And the first officer, as the pilot flying, would have been concentrating on aviating and navigating the aircraft. And the captain may well have moved the fuel switches to cutoff as a memory item standard procedure for an engine fire. Just simply, he was overwhelmed by the tsunami of the EICAS messages. And we've got the evidence from the cockpit voice recorder, this so-called startled effect. What did you just do? Me? No, I didn't do anything at all.
Mm. So is there any evidence at all of fire or smoke during the Air India takeoff?
Yes, and I think
Mm.
it's interesting. The preliminary report only talks about the fuel explosion after the crash and doesn't mention any fire or smoke. But I come back to a picture we showed in episode 161, which we entitled Obfuscation question mark on the 20th of July. And we showed now a screenshot again. On the left is the picture from the preliminary report of the aircraft taking off, and there's no evidence of smoke or dust or anything behind the aircraft. And the picture on the right from the CCTV footage, where there's clearly dust or smoke from to be seen from the aircraft. And it raises in my mind whether at this point in time, just after takeoff, there was indeed smoke coming from one or the other engine or from some other part of the aircraft.
Mm.
And,
Mm.
we don't have an answer to that question at the moment.
No, we don't. Yeah, look, it's once again, there's so many questions from that report, and it makes it very, very difficult to analyze it to the level that we would like to analyze it. But we are discovering, as we have unveiled over the last number of episodes, serious questions and serious concerns about what did happen on that tragic flight.
In fact, more questions raised than answers given.
Yeah. Yes.
And it makes
Yeah.
it very difficult to then quote the preliminary report as a factual source of information in an analysis. And it
Mm.
leaves us then reliant on other sources. So the CCTV footage or the Flight
Mm.
Radar 24 ADS-B data.
Mm.
Um, and that shouldn't be, that we should be able to rely on the preliminary report. And it would be lovely to have more hard data from the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, from the airport radar system, from the ADS-B official data, ACARS data, and all of that is absent
Yeah.
by and large from
Yeah.
the preliminary report.
Yeah. We must mention here that there are a number of people who are a little bit critical of us for continuing to investigate this crash, and they're simply saying, why don't you sit back and wait for the final report? Well, as we have pointed out on numerous occasions, sometimes the final report never comes out. And sometimes the final report comes out and is seriously flawed and called out by other co-investigators, which we have highlighted as well. So I think it's essential, we think it's essential, to keep pressure on the Indian authorities to give us clarity around exactly what happened as soon as possible, because, as we have pointed out numerous times, there are 2,100 787 flights a day carrying tens of thousands of passengers. And it just it's essential for the international travelling community to know whether this is an Air India problem or is it a 787 problem. And we still don't have clarity on that at all. You agree, Richard?
I do indeed. And as I've said before, it would be a great tragedy if something like this were to happen again.
Yeah, it would indeed. So, viewers, that's all we've got time for today. Unless something dramatic happens, we are taking the day off tomorrow. And we're, in fact, coming back on Sunday with some important news on the search for MH370, which we will bring you on Sunday. And then Monday, we'll be back to answer your questions from this episode and yesterday's episode, because there's already a number of questions stacked up that are really great, and we'll look at those on Monday. So, Richard, thank you very much indeed for all your work on this fascinating episode. I really appreciate it very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And to viewers, please like us, please subscribe to us. We really do appreciate your support. Please keep those wonderful comments coming, and of course, keep those fascinating questions coming. They're really excellent. And do tune in on Sunday, for what will be a fascinating episode. Thank you very much.